I'm Brandon Miller, and you are listening to Coach. This weekly series dives deep into the world of Clifton strengths and how they impact your daily life. Hear from certified strengths coaches on the ins and outs, quirks, and characteristics of all 34 strengths and 4 domains and how they play out in real life. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back. Season 2 of the Strengths Whisperer, Coach to Coach. And today we are talking about the strength of learner. I have with me in the studio Angeline Soon, and she is going to be our resident expert on the learner strength. Angeline can be found on LinkedIn if you just type in Angeline Soon, S-O-O-N. She is happy to connect. She puts a lot of amazing content out on a consistent basis, as any true learner would do. Fascinated with ideas, sharing different ways you can grow. Comes to us with a very cool tech meets strengths, corporate meets small business. She's recently made her transition from the day job to the entrepreneurial endeavor. I've been following her journey with interest as she describes her day-to-day. And she is here to help connect coaches with their clients through developing content, education pieces. And so we're going to get to learn all about that today. Angeline, welcome to the studio.
Hi, Brandon. I am super excited to be here, and I am really impressed at how succinct you're able to introduce me in just mere minutes. Amazing.
I tell you what, I try to learn with my learners, because this is not a strength that lives for me in my dominant set. And so I'm always very interested to partner, talk with, and combine with those of you who lead with this strength. It is a very common strength globally. I've seen it ranked as high as number 2 in the world, number 3 in the world. I think it jostles position with responsibility. And depending on which poll you look at, you'll see where it lands. But a really common strength, and I just am super curious, keyword of the day, super curious to hear how you describe this, and go ahead and take us along the path of learner.
Right. So I love that learner is so common, but it also shows up differently for everybody that I've spoken with that have learner in their top 5 or top 10. So what I will share today is how I see my learner, how it shows up for me, and how I leverage it for my own career and my own personal life. And if I have to define learner, it's just we enjoy the joy of learning, going from 0 to 1, from not knowing to know, picking up a skill like learning guitar or cooking or pickleball. Yeah, it's so common nowadays. But yes, so that to me is a trait of learner, just liking, really drawn to learning something new. But if I dig a level deeper, there is this fearlessness that accompanies a learner. We're not afraid of not knowing because we trust that our learner will somehow get us from 0 to 1 or beyond. That we can learn it, we can figure it out.
That's an excellent summary. So listeners, 0 to 1, if you're working with a learner, the fearlessness to stare at an opportunity where presently you don't know what you don't know. You're new to it, but you do know that the information is out there and you can go find it. And I agree with Angeline. Learners that I know in my life, there is this almost, this strength, this courage to face unknown, because there is this almost confidence and this space of a knowing that, well, I'll just learn it. I'll just figure it out. I'll do the research. I'll do the work that it takes, and then I'll know what I don't know. And then once I know it, I can decide if I like it, because liking it and deciding if I want to do it again, that comes after the knowing, because the knowing and the understanding, the comprehension, the appreciation, that seems to be the strength within this strength. Is that where we're landing here?
Yes. And I think that you point out a very good distinction in how I see my own learner develop is that I like to go from 0 to 1. I just need to scratch the surface, learn what it is, and then I can decide if I want to go further or I'm done with it and let's move on to something else. That's more interesting.
My favorite term to describe learner is broadly curious. So there's a broad curiosity. And I once worked with a team that happened to be in the insurance industry. And one of the team members was a top 5 learner. And I wanted to demonstrate to the group that when Dr. Don Clifton developed the Clifton Strengths, formerly known as Strengths Finder, the Strengths Finder assessment, what he studied were patterns of behavior. So recurring patterns of how we think, how we feel, how we behave, and then how one might apply those patterns with practice, with effort, with energy, putting force behind the patterns so that they could become something reproducible, something that could return back to a state of top performance or excellence. And in his work, what he talked about was that these patterns, because they're built in, when we discover our strengths, top 5, possibly all the way up through 10 or more, usually people would say 15 is kind of like the box, but that whatever that is for a person, those dominant talents, those core strengths, they recur whether at times we choose them or not, because they're automatic. They're thinking patterns, they're behaving patterns. And so in this group of 3, I tested them. I said, I've been wondering something, and perhaps one of the 3 of you could help me. And I said, I placed a piece of paper. I wonder how we would solve this problem if we could look it up. And in my head, and the other members were prepped, in our heads, we all counted down 3, 2, and we didn't even get to 1 before the learner went, I'll do that, reached in, grabbed the thing and said, I'll do that right now. And the whole room exploded laughing. And she said, what? Why are we laughing? And it was because that is learner, the opportunity to learn. Sometimes even more, as you said, more than the outcome seems to bring energy to the learner, seems to derive back to them a sense of satisfaction, of pleasure, of, yes, I'm facilitating this strength in me. And I'm curious for you, because you've recently taken a big step. Let's call it a big life step, right? I mean, in all fairness, so you've taken a huge step from, where you were in career to a new place. And I want to ask, how did your learner play into the decision? How has it helped you to make that 0 to 1 step that you're making right now in your career life transition?
Yeah, so very, very good question. Very deep one, Brendan. I got to give it to you for that. So for listeners, Brendan has alluded to that earlier. After almost 20 plus years in corporate America, I've decided to try something new in this different season of my life. And so I am embarking on my own entrepreneurial journey. And knowing that in order to make this journey successful, I have to lean on my strengths. And so I've taken a very deliberate effort to figure out what strengths do I need to use, what do I need to aim daily with my strengths in order to make myself successful. And learner is definitely one that I had to lean into very heavily. So part of the transition is about bringing along my existing skills that I can leverage, which I spend many years in IT consulting, and that is the constant learning environment. So that's what I bring it's the constant learning. But then starting my own business, oh my gosh, if I did not have the fearlessness to say to myself, I don't know what the answer is, but I'll figure it out. Let me ask Google, ChatGPT, any AI tool, we'll figure it out. So that sort of learner mentality really is the resilient to failure almost. That's how I see it. It's like, I'm resilient because I can lean on my learner. And I use learner so heavily every day now that I am 20 days, at the time of the recording, I am 20 days into my entrepreneurial journey.
And I want to say, Angeline, congratulations on taking that giant step. I know many of our listeners do have inside of them this dream, this goal, this aspiration. I was speaking to someone recently in the corporate space who just moved into a new role in life with family, starting the young family, and now starting to ask themselves, is it time for me to chart my own course? Is it time for me to make that step? And what I hear from you is confidence. And what I hear from you is confidence born of competence. Because what learner gives the person with this strength is what you just described so well. If I don't know, I will find out, because the unknown in this sort of life step, this sort of career transition, it's out there. It's there because this is a whole new way of being, a whole new way of doing. And yet it would seem that you have one of the core strengths that enables you to go down this path with some boldness, some confidence, some resilience to, even when, not if, when you encounter setbacks, when an idea doesn't work, when something doesn't produce revenue, let's just be clear, when something isn't profitable, right?
Yes.
When it doesn't work, I've noticed with learners, you bounce back really fast. You bounce back really fast. And I'm curious if you could speak to that, because, throughout your life career, obviously this has been part of one of your go-tos, right? Whether you had the name yet or not, it's been one of your go-to and something you've noticed about yourself. And Clifton Strengths has provided vocabulary, but usually it affirms something that we go, yeah, that's totally me. That's 100% me. And so talk to us a little bit about that resilience, that bounce back that comes with learner.
I love the question because the minute you asked the question, it sort of transported me back to my earlier career days. Well, you're absolutely right, Brendan. I did not have, at that point, the vocabulary to describe, this is how I approach things. It is only through hindsight that I learn about learner that I now look back and say, oh, that makes so much sense. And I talked about being in IT consulting for a long time. That is the bulk of my career. And being an IT consultant, I have to go into a client space, have to quickly figure out what problems they are encountering. Typically, it's technology of some sort. But most of the time, it doesn't mean that I have mastery or expertise in that technology. I have to be able to quickly suss out, what do I need to learn just enough so that I can help them move forward. And while it is a little bit daunting sometimes, it is super exciting. Like, I will lose myself when I have a new tech that I get to learn and figure out, like, oh, what are all these terminology? What are the websites that have, what are all the YouTube videos that I can learn everything about, let's say, big data or AI or whatever it is that I was dealing with at that point. And, sometimes in consulting, things sometimes don't go our way. And, we help the client as much as we can. But I always walk away knowing, like, okay, I have learned something in this engagement, and it is not a waste. It is not a failure because I have learned something. I take that, I move to my next client, next assignment.
I love that. I like to say I'm a coach. I coach sports, and I have competition as one of my dominant strengths. And so I hate to lose. I don't just dislike it. I hate to lose. But over time, the influence of learners in my life has actually supported an idea in business, in even family, in investing, in tech advancements is speed to fail. Speed to fail. Because if one is willing to get to fail, if one is willing to accept the L, and the L, I have learned to transliterate the loss to a learned. And if one can learn to take the loss to a learn, what they've done is they've allowed that experience to very quickly inform the next phase. Because now I know what doesn't work, which gives me the ability to focus on what does. And even as a high competitor, I can tell you that it's a little bit of a mind, right? I know I'm intentionally tilting my mind in a direction. It doesn't like how it feels. It still knows, like, yeah, cut through the crap, you still lost, right? It's still telling me that. But what it allows for the step forward is, all right, we can sulk in the loss or give myself a little time to absorb the loss, but then quickly go, okay, now let's move to the learn, right? And so curious for you because
So powerful.
Well, I tell you what, because you're stepping into the realm that I have occupied for many years, which is entrepreneurship, right? And the simple reality in entrepreneurship is failure is inevitable. Like finding things that don't work, that's not hard. It is not hard to find the things that don't work. What is hard is learning fast, right? Fail fast, learn faster, engage quickly, right? Engage into what's the next. And just, I know it's fresh. I know you're 20 days in, but have you found some places where it's like, yep, that's not going to work? Yeah. Have you found any of those yet in your journey?
Yeah. So, your competition story sort of reminded me of a phrase that I really lean into, especially, fresh into this entrepreneurial journey. Failure is never wasted. When I attempt something, I either get the results I want or the lessons I need. So even in this 20 days that I was testing out different services that I want to offer, like I exited corporate with a certain idea that this is what I want to offer. And I was leaning into my learner and trying to figure out, okay, do I want to provide the service? And, for full transparency, it was IT project management consulting, which is my bread and butter for the last 20 years. Like I can do it in my sleep. And I'm like, I can build the business around it. Why not? But then my learner told me that says, well, you've been doing that for 20 years. Don't you want to try something else? Don't you want to learn something else and combine with your entrepreneurship? Aren't you going to get bored? So I'm like, yes, let's turn it slightly, pivot slightly. I'm going to try something different. And, at the top of the podcast, Brendan, you mentioned I am keen on connecting Clifton Strengths coaches with their ideal client through educational content, co-writing with them on educational content. That is something I'm taking some of my existing skills, but I'm learning how to provide it as a service to Clifton Strengths coaches. And that is what my learner is allowing me to do.
I'll tell you what, to our thousands of listeners out there, many of you Gallup certified strengths coaches, I have been following Angeline on LinkedIn for quite some time now. And I can tell you that her content is rich with knowledge. It's rich with understanding. She has very, very quickly demonstrated her subject matter expertise, which is a big part of learner. And especially, we're not doing it today, especially when you couple learner with some other key strengths, it quickly can become a SME, subject matter expert in an area. And so my endorsement for Angeline today is that what you would get working with her is a very thorough, well thought through, studied, and capable thought partner, and someone that can support that sort of effort where you're trying to advance an idea within a client. And I imagine, Angeline, that not only for coaches who are independent as we are, but even those trying to come up with solutions inside of their org, they have thoughts, they have ideas like, if we could just do this. I think it's fair to say you learners are fantastic thought partners because you don't know boundaries on the learning landscape. So you're willing to just expand the learning as far out and in whatever place it needs to go. Would that be an accurate description for you?
That is a really good description. And I think there are many types of learner, perhaps. For me, I definitely like to go sort of wide. Like you said, no boundaries. Explore, trying to get to excellence may or may not be an end goal. It depends on what it is. But I think learner has this ability to stay, we call it like the T-shaped skills, right? Where we can go pretty wide on several different topics, maybe adjacent to each other, maybe even not related. And then when we find something that we can really sink our teeth into, then we go super deep in that. And Clifton Strengths is what I found to be fascinating. And so I'm super deep in it.
With your background, your knowledge, you could have chose lots of assessments out there. And at 34 Strong, we're definitely loyal to Clifton Strengths, the 34 Strength themes. However, we know that psychometric assessments are built to provide language, to provide vocabularies, understanding, and they all take different angles at different spaces. But you chose this one, and I'm curious, as a learner, what made you root here? What made you root in this particular modality, this particular assessment, this space?
Man, I don't know if we have enough time to cover sort of my Clifton Strengths journey, but I'll try to make it a little bit more succinct. I'll have to admit to you, Brendan, and it's kind of hard to think back, but I did not really latch onto it at first. I did not. I took the assessment, not because I wanted to, but because my dad is actually also a certified strengths coach. So I did it because I am a good daughter. I do what he asked me to do, and I took the assessment. And I did not like the results. I had a preconceived notion of who I am at that point in my life. And I have this surface level understanding of the report, right? I just did the assessment, I print out the report, and I read it. In 10 minutes, I'm like, this is not me. Forget it. So I took it into a corner in the drawer, and I really did not want to face the reality for a while. But the whole reason that I came back to Clifton Strengths is because I realized I was sort of living a life where I was not truly me. I was just trying to be what everybody wants me to be. And I came back and looked at my strengths report again. I mean, my dad, he was really good. He did not nag me. He didn't say like, hey, I told you so. You should have used this. He just sort of like left it there, And I came back to Clifton Strengths, and I really started thinking about who am I lying to other than myself? Then took the initiative to start learning about, okay, what does my top 5 mean? What does learner mean to me in this context? And what I really found is that in my previous career, I was operating in a sense where it is not authentic to myself. And the reason I did not like the report was because I thought I was supposed to be good in a lot of the themes that were my lesser themes. But I tried to pretend that I'm good at it or that I love doing those things because that's what everybody expected me to do. So really it was sort of I went from a low in my life and using the help of Clifton Strengths to help me climb back up and try to reconcile with myself who really I am. And you know what? we're talking about learner today. And one of the pivot point of my career was when I know that I have learner and I know that I can actually find another job that was very in line with my learning desire at that point. So I went into a new tech company, a new industry, working with state and local government and federal government, which I've never worked with before. But I just trusted my learner. I said, I have picked up new things in my last 20 years of my career. I can do it in a new space. And that's what led me to transition to my previous job, which I absolutely love. But then I went into a different season of my personal life that pushed me towards entrepreneurship. But that's how learner has showed up over and over again.
I love it. I love it. I had this feeling today coming in with someone who's made the massive transition, in most people's minds. What you've done is very significant, and hearing the journey of discovery, right? So it's the discovery of a way to define, describe, identify who I am. And then that discovery feeds into the decisions that I can make, the options that I have. And for you, it sounds very much like the discovery of this learner strength has helped to shape and define and really pave a path that you're now walking down in this new part of your journey.
That's such a good way to put it. Whenever you publish this podcast, I will need to go back and grab some of these really amazing nuggets that you sort of summarize my life event in like 5 words.
I'm glad we can both lean into your learner and listening and understanding. I've always found that learners are very good at listening. There's a humility to them because they don't have to know it all, because they can go learn it. And there's an acceptance that others can even know more than me. And so, great learners can do that. So Angeline Soon here today talking about learner. And Angeline, what is the name of your business?
My new business name is Amplify Soon.
Amplify Soon.
Yeah. So hopefully it's easy to remember. My name is Angeline Soon. My company name is Amplify Soon.
Amplify Soon. And you can find Angeline prolifically on LinkedIn. And she is regularly, as I said, putting out very thought-provoking posts that I encourage you to take a look at. Strengths coaches, if you're looking for a thought partner, solutions, ideas, Angeline is definitely someone that would be happy to talk with you. And also, dear listeners, today, I do want to make you aware of a resource that we have available to you. Our resource is called How to Be a Good Teammate to Me, and it is a resource that describes the contributions and needs of all 34 Clifton strengths. And it also has an exercise at the end called The Best of Me. Great team activity for those of you who have teams or work with teams. This resource, we've had it downloaded or sent out many times to our friends that are listening to the podcast. Angeline, I believe you have a copy of this. And
yes.
I think early on, you might have been one of our first requests, actually. And so if that's something, listener, that you would like, you can email Brandon at 34strong.com or visit 34strong.com, and you can learn more about us and the resources that we do have for strengths coaches. So we are now going to wrap up our time today, Angeline. Anything else that we might have left on the table for learner? Any thoughts that come to mind that we might share with our listeners? I'm a learner and I want to be a better learner. Any thoughts there for our friends here today? Or I work with a learner and I want to be a great team member to my learner. Any parting thoughts for our listeners today?
I think I have a word of encouragement for my fellow learners. I know we live in a world where change is almost the only constant nowadays. And I would say learner is such a useful Clifton Strengths theme to lean into Because if you can learn, then change doesn't scare you much.
Beautiful. Angeline, thank you so much for joining me today. Listeners, we will be back next time with our next Clifton Strength. And as always, please share this podcast with others. You can find us on all of the channels. And we're so grateful for you. Thank you. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for tuning in to the Strengths Whisperer Coach to Coach. Please feel free to reach out to Brandon to partner with 34 Strong for collaboration opportunities to serve your employees or clients together. If you are a strengths coach, lead a strengths-based team, or are a fan of strength, we invite you to receive our complimentary resource, How to Be a Good Teammate to Me, Understanding My Contributions and Needs. Email Brandon_Miller at 34strong.com to connect, and he will gladly share this resource that will continue to unlock the power of strength.